Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Complete Sports Media's podcast. I'm your host, Darren Campbell. Really excited that you could join us today, and I'm extra excited because we're going to be bringing in a guest, Rob Fai from Rob Fai Nation and the Vancouver Canadians. He's the broadcast voice of the Seas, a professional baseball team here in Vancouver, and we can't be more excited to have him join us and sharing a lot of great stories. Rob is a gem in the broadcasting industry, and I hope you enjoy this as much as I do. Let's patch Rob in right now and have him join us. Okay, yeah, it looks like I've got Rob on our Zoom call here. Welcome to Complete Sports Media Podcast, our Zoom call. You're in my studio here, Rob. Thanks for joining. I like your studio too.
Yeah, it's not bad. I paint these by hand. I don't know if people used to play video games, but I'm a big fan of Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. So I go to the dollar store, buy a couple of different colors, and just, I don't know, put something on the wall, I guess.
That looks great. Looks really good. So,
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. Everybody, this is the Vin Scully of Vancouver. He is the voice of Vancouver's professional baseball team here, the Vancouver Canadians, and he's been doing this for many, many years. I think he's been part of the organization for 14 years now.
Yeah.
And yeah, 14 years. Wow, congratulations on that, Rob. And yeah, I love to talk baseball with you. Always have. I knew Rob long ago, and yeah, it's great to see him flourishing and thriving and doing so well in the Vancouver industry for baseball. Yeah, thanks for joining us, Rob. This is going to be a lot of fun.
It's my pleasure. And for those that are watching this or listening, when I first started out in this industry in the mid-90s, I was always so smitten watching you do your television stuff and learning from you. And then you were the one guy that went away to the States, and we were all like, man, you know, if we could be like him one day. So yeah, I'm thrilled to be here, but that was and I'm aging myself. That was 25 years ago.
Amazing. Isn't that amazing? Wow.
It
incredible. Yeah. It's amazing how time flies. And I really appreciate the nice comments. I always was really impressed with your drive and tenacity. I was impressed with you right from the start, knowing that you were the only walk-on to come to Vancouver for the NBI and the National Baseball Institute. Tell me about deciding to leave Ontario and come out here and join that organization and try to make the team and everything. Yeah, that must have been a daunting task.
All high school, I wanted to go and play my baseball south of the border, because if you were to go back to the early 90s, a Canadian getting drafted was a real rarity. I mean, now in this day and age, you're looking at multiple players every year that seem to make their way into a major league organization. But back in the early 90s, I graduated in 1992. It was really hard to find a scout that was there north of the border that had the ear of a major league team. So I would go down. I did my first year of university college at Grace College, which was a theological seminary. I didn't realize it until I got there what a theological seminary was, but I learned quickly. And then when I came back that summer, my mom actually said that she was going to be moving from Toronto to Vancouver. And she says, well, do you want to come with me? And I was carrying a 0.7 GPA at Grace, which meant I was going to have to sit out a semester, and decided that I was going to take the trip. And what was interesting is one of my high school teammates from when I played high school baseball was a guy by the name of Todd Betts. And he had just come back from playing at the National Baseball Institute, which was located here in Vancouver. So when I got off the plane, I didn't know left from right. All I knew is that I still felt like I had a couple innings left in my arm, and I wanted to compete at a game at a level that I thought was, you know, maybe going to get me a couple of looks, because the aspiration was to play baseball professionally. And so I walked on to the National Baseball Institute. And John Har, who was the head coach, was, how would I describe this? Skeptical, maybe because, you know, I wasn't really a guy that was on his radar. And that was fine. But I showed up every day at the Wally Sports Complex, brought my glove, brought my bag, and eventually he let me on the other side of the fence to start working out with the team. So it's kind of, if you know the Field of Dreams movie, I'm the Moonlight Graham of the National Baseball Institute, because I got to pitch one inning of one game. And I still remember my stat line. I gave up one run on one hit. I struck out one and I walked one. And that was the only inning I ever played. But for those who still, I guess, delve into the grandeur of baseball and the sexiness of it, it was really cool to have put on that uniform, played an inning with that program, and at least say that I made it from Toronto to Vancouver and got to pitch with the best in Canada.
Good for you. Yeah, great story. I just love it that you can bring the Field of Dreams into that story, and to have that stat line, and good for you with the perseverance. I saw it in baseball field, then I saw it in the broadcasting world. We were doing a TV show, and you decided you wanted to come and help out as much as you could, and I loved your enthusiasm, your baseball knowledge. I was a baseball fan from a very young age too, and so it was really nice to talk baseball with somebody playing the game and so eager. And then I eventually left the show, and I think you ended up taking over for a little while as well, didn't you?
It was a bit of a revolving door. I mean, that's the beauty of community television. And, I never went to school for broadcasting, and yet I get to teach at broadcasting schools. They'll bring me in to public speak for them and tell them the ropes. And I say, trust me, you want to go to school for this industry, because the bumpy road that I took was a little longer to get to the finish line. But that said, every day I got to come to community television, be it Shaw, be it Rogers, and it was a blank canvas. And I think in this day and age, where everything's a little more cookie cutter than it was in previous, generations, it was cool to be able to cover the Grizzlies, or, interview Dominic Mobilio and see the 86ers before they came the Whitecaps, and all those little things that now I look back on, even though I didn't have the mic flash of a major network like TSN or The Score or whoever it was back then, just the fact that I got to be a part of it and cut my teeth that way, I think has a lot to do with the kind of broadcaster that I've become today.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. And I agree with you that cookie cutter thing can work for a lot of networks, but, I prefer guys like yourself that, aren't from that mold and have been able to, forge a career and just do it your way. You've done it with the C's, and you've also done it with Rob Fai Nation. I was always really impressed with that show every time I had an opportunity to tune in, 10 to midnight. A lot of fun. You just really didn't fit that mold that most of the other shows had to have, and it was nice to see that they took an opportunity, brought you in. You had a couple of great years there. And it was a lot of fun. It must have been really fantastic. 5 days a week being able to do that and just have your guests and, talk about those couple years.
I think for me, the one thing that I always wanted was just to be able to walk in and say, let's push the bubble. Let's see what we can come up with. So when I started doing Rob Fai Nation Radio, it was all about, like, in addition to, because you got to remember, I'm on at 10 o'clock to midnight. So there's been 12 hours of opinion and hot takes, and everybody knows everything. So why not be the guy that says, okay, cool, but let's look at it from a different perspective. So I would bring in not just athletes, but I'd bring in local nightclub DJs, chefs, different people from different walks of life, and tried to make it more conversational. I would let callers go on for 3 or 4 minutes instead of just 30 seconds and really let them feel like they had value in the show. And so the most recent ratings book that came out in spring of 2020, when the book came out, you got to remember, the late night guys never get the advertisers. They never get the sales guys that come in because they want to, feed the day parts. So the book came out, which is, of course, everybody wants to see where they rank and what their ratings are. And that's, I guess, new music to the ears of the sales guys that can then go out and pitch stuff. My show came in number 2 of all the sports shows in this city. So only behind Harrison Price. I beat Donnie and the Moj. I beat Halford and Bruff. I boat raced everybody at Sportsnet 650. And so all of a sudden, everybody said, well, wait a minute. This throwaway guy at 10 o'clock at night has the second highest ratings of any sports show in the city. What's going on? And that's when I think all of a sudden people started to say, maybe there's something here, not just in the time slot, but in the formula of the way that he's approached the show. So now I have all these different people come up and say, well, how would you do this? And what would you do? And I laugh because when I first started the show, nobody cared at all about that style of radio. But now, and I'm not saying it's just me, but I think if you broadcast from the heart and you give people stuff that is relevant instead of just blowing some stats up somebody's ass, that eventually somebody's going to be like, you know what, that's the kind of radio that I want to listen to. And I learned that from Dan Russell. I learned it from the late night guys that really understood that by the end of the day, once you put your kids to bed, you just want to have a conversation.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I think you just hit the nail on the head. And I think so many people agree with your take on that. And yeah, it was really amazing to see that rise in popularity. And that's amazing. You know, like you said, it's a throwaway time slot for a lot of radio stations. And, you know, but you seized the opportunity and made a really great show of it. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on at this time is I've heard you got some exciting news that Rob Fai Nation is coming back in a podcast form. So
Yeah.
it must be exciting. And you mentioned Dan Russell. I think he's going to be one of your initial guests on your first show, right?
Boy, you've done your homework, man. I'm impressed, Darren. Good for you. So here's the deal. And I'll keep this as politically correct as I can. I've done the show on TSN for the last couple of years, but the Vancouver Canadians have their contract, their rights with Sportsnet 650. For the first time in 14 years, we did our season on the other station. So basically, I can't do my show on 1040 right now because if I want to do Canadians baseball, I've got to do it on 650, and 650 doesn't have anything for me right now. That's okay. So the reality is instead of me worrying about if I'm going to go left or right, if I'm going to wear the red shirt or the blue shirt, I'm just going to do it myself, because that, at the end of the day, has always been the recipe for me, is just do something that when you put it out there is approachable and enjoyable and heck, maybe even a little fun and informative. But I was just like, let's do a podcast, because everybody's listening on their phones now in this day and age, right? So my first show, which debuts this coming Wednesday, I'm not sure when you're going to post this, Darren, but in the middle of July, is going to be 12 Vancouver Canuck broadcasters, 12 play-by-play guys, everybody from Jim Robson through to Bernie Pascal, Ron Barnett, the early stage guys, right through to John Abbott, Joey Kenward, John Shorthouse, Brendan Batchelor, Jim Houston, all of them. But the cool part about this, and this is where I'm going to really test my technical side, is I want to make it sound like all 12 of them are sitting at a table with me at the same time. So they've all been recorded over the course of the last 4 or 5 days. Now it's my job to put all 12 of those guys in the same room at the same time. And if I could pull this one off, I really think that I've done the name Rob Fai Nation Radio justice.
Wow. Wow. What an undertaking. That's fantastic. What a great idea. And that's amazing to be able to have 12 guys. I think there is only 12 guys that have ever held that role. Is that correct?
Well, okay, so I'm glad you asked, because Dan Russell, who I interviewed while he's in Thailand, I was up at 10 o'clock last night trying to get him around lunchtime, had mentioned 2 guys that I did not have on my list. So all of a sudden, I mentioned one guy that he didn't have on his list, but Danny Gallivan, who's obviously passed away, Jim Cox has passed away. Those are 2. I would have had 14 if everybody was alive. But the reality is, and this is where Dan Russell's a really cool dude, and I've long loved Dan Russell. I know he's a bit polarizing, but for me, he's a student of the sport. He's a student of the industry. And after we finished the interview, an hour later, I got an email from him, and he says, I don't know if it's worth it, but here's an interview that I did back in 1989 with Danny Gallivan. So I was able to extract the clips of Danny Gallivan from 1989 and blend it into what I'm building right now, so that essentially, even though he's passed away, he'll still be a part of the conversation. And I've been really thinking to myself, there's 100 podcasts out there that all want to talk about, how fast is Brock Besser? Why would they trade, this guy for that guy? That's low-hanging fruit. What you do is bring stories to life. What I want to do is create the theater of imagination. Could you really imagine sitting at a table with a dozen guys that have Canuck play-by-play experience? That to me is clickable. It's why I would listen. If you want to sit here and tell me how good Bo Horvat is, I don't have time for that. But if you want to do something that I haven't heard before, I will definitely click on. So that's what I'm trying to build.
Good for you. Yeah. Good for you. That's really, really fun. I can't wait to listen. I'm going to let a lot of people know, and I'm sure they will all want to listen as well. Yeah, that's a really great idea. I want to go back, I guess, just your story reminded me of my story a bit. I always wanted to work for the Canucks. I wanted to be that guy. I wanted to be Jim Robson.
We all did.
I think we all did, didn't we? Yeah. I pointed to Jim Robson on the TV and said to my family, I wanted to have his job one day. And, I was met with a lot of negative comments, just a lot of like, I don't think that's going to be possible. And I, just said, no, that's really what I want to do. And I persevered. And the very first game that I got to go to the Canucks as a reporter, I got my press pass. I went up to the area in the Pacific Coliseum, and I made some food from the buffet table. I put some food on a plate, and I walked over to a empty table, and I sat down and I had a couple bites. And all of a sudden I hear, is this seat taken? And I look up, and it's Jim Robson. And he sits down next to me, and we end up having a full-on conversation. And I just thought back to that little kid that had pointed to the TV and, often on the radio and said, that's the guy that I really want to take his job one day. And obviously I didn't, but, you're able to talk to all these guys that have, and that's incredible. That's a really great thought of putting together your first initial podcast and having those guys all with it. Isn't that amazing?
The thing that I really appreciate, and I didn't even realize it until this week, is how many of these hockey guys have done other sports. I mean, Rick Ball, who's a part of this conversation as well, used to be the BC Lions broadcaster. Jim Houston used to do baseball for the Blue Jays. And so you start going off on it was really hard to keep these conversations streamlined where I wanted them to go, because they're so fascinating as individuals. And, Jim Houston doing the Blue Jay baseball with Rance Mullenix and Jesse Barfield. And you talk to Jim Robson, who within 3 weeks, he had done pro hockey, baseball, and football. And I said, how did you do that? He says, well, it's a lot of, he said it was really technical, because the only thing that was different was just the verbiage. Is, baseball's got its own language, football's a little crankier, it's got its own language, and then, hockey's got its own speed, its own language. So here I am, it's like, and I'm 46, but I'm still like a child in my head. I've got like this huge crush on guys that can do this and do this well, and ladies as well. And I sit there and I just say, man, I could talk to these guys all day. So I've got probably 5-6 hours of footage, and I've got to dwindle it down to half an hour to an hour. That's what I've given myself. So there's going to be a lot of awesome stuff on the cutting room floor, but I think a lot of that's just because I couldn't hang up the phone with them. I just wanted to keep talking and learn more about them.
No doubt. Yeah. Well, I think I maybe saw a tweet from you that said half an hour. And I said, how is it possible? There's going to be just so many gems on the cutting room floor. So I hope it's not half an hour. I actually hope it's closer to the hour.
Yeah, there might be a part 2. There might have to be a part 2.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, wow, that's exciting. That's really exciting news. And luckily a lot of these guys aren't just, hockey people. They definitely have been in many of the other sports and the other broadcasting worlds. And, that's going to be fantastic. I'm really excited for you. I know the other thing that, is top of mind and top of, your world is the cancellation of the minor league baseball seasons in the C's. And, I love talking about the positive things, but obviously, this is a negative thing. But tell me what's the feeling and the sentiment with the C's organization on this COVID-19 new world and the unfortunate cancellation of the season.
Well, let me tell you, I got a meeting in 5 minutes to address just this with everybody here at Nappy League Stadium, because it is constantly changing. I don't think in my lifetime I've ever experienced a situation where it's been so fluid, that every day you step up to the ballpark or come to your place of work, something's different. A number has changed, a policy's changed, something's revised. You're constantly making sure. So what I did this morning is I had a couple of people with the Toronto Blue Jays FaceTime me, and they gave me a tour of the dressing room, of the field, the dugouts, everything. So now it's my job to take that information down to the Canadians and say, okay, here's how the Blue Jays have applied it. We have to do this before our season starts next year, because we just lost an entire season of professional baseball because of COVID-19. We cannot afford, as a small business in the city, to lose another season. So we now, between here and this conversation in April or May, whenever our season starts, we don't know, but that's for another conversation. We have to prove to the government, to Dr. Bonnie Henry, that our policy and our building is up to snuff, that we can host events at our stadium again. So it is, Darren, I'm definitely not certified to talk about this on a health level, but I just know from a stadium operations perspective, something that I've been privy to every day, there is no answer. And anybody that tells you that they have one is lying or just trying to get ahead of it, because the reality is what I can tell you today in 2 weeks could be something completely different. So yeah, you just keep your head on a swivel and do the best that you can.
Yeah. Well, yeah, good luck. Obviously, it's a huge undertaking, and a lot of the professional leagues around North America have been having these same types of conversations that I guess you're having, and, you know, trying to make it safe and, you know, bring fans back to the ballpark. And losing those 38 dates has got to be tough for a, you know, small organization like yourself. You know, how does a team survive over this? You know, is there a commitment long term? I know there was an agreement signed quite a few years ago with the city that was pretty long term. You know, how does it work for you know, a minor league professional baseball team like this?
We have been unbelievably fortunate that the city of Vancouver has been as accommodating as they have been. I mean, our ownership is local, and I think that has something to do with it. The fact that Jake Kerr, Jeff Mooney, and Andy Dunn are in town, they're actively working with our, you know, provincial government to listen. And that is something that I've learned over the last couple of months. Is it's real easy to go out there and beat your chest and say, well, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it, and yada, yada, yada. But the reality is you've got to react instead of be, you know, somebody out there trying to tell people what they're going to do, because it changes so quickly. So we've basically taken a step back. There was a great quote that I heard a long time ago. The hardest thing you'll ever have to do in your life is be the last person at the table to speak. But if you're the last person, you've learned, you've collected the most information. And that's why I think the Vancouver Canadians have been pretty good with handling this pandemic from a business perspective, because instead of going out there and immediately being reactive, immediately saying, oh my gosh, this is what we're going to do, or oh no, we're screwed, they've basically just said, okay, well, let's see what John Horgan has. Let's see what Dr. Bonnie Henry's saying. Let's look at the trends and the numbers and try to get enough data and analytic where we can make a smart decision for our fans and a smart business decision as to how we're going to be able to get on the other side of this. So for me right now, we've had to furlough half of our staff, and that's unfortunate. I get some really good friends that aren't working today, and that's really heart-wrenching. But I also understand that in the business of sport, you do have to pull back when there's no fans coming through the gates. So we will open again. I assume we're going to open in 2021, but it's not going to look the same, Darren. Our food and beverage is going to be different. The way that you walk into the stadium and leave the stadium will change. In a perfect world, we're at 100% capacity. We might not be by next April or May. So we have to have plans in place for every possible scenario that are airtight. So when it's our turn to sit in front of John Horgan and Dr. Bonnie Henry, they look at us and they say, they've done their due diligence. They've done it right. The science is there. Let's bring baseball back to town. And I think that's why meetings like the one I'm about to go to happen, is just because you've got to sit there and learn and listen. And that's what I think we've done really well so far.
All right. Yeah, good for you. Well, we're waiting for more information to come out from all of those meetings. And you know, this puts a real damper on, you know, my summer, puts a real damper on 240,000 fans that come out, you know, every year to the ballpark. Nat Bailey is our Yankee Stadium. We get to hear the Vin Scully of Vancouver, and you know, you make my summer.
I'll trade anything for your beard. You got that like perfect beard going, man. That Sean Connery thing.
You're hilarious. Yeah. So yeah, it's really been unfortunate. You know, this has hit. The other thing that hit a lot of minor league franchises was the talk of contraction. 160 teams have an affiliation with Major League Baseball, and they wanted to contract it by about 42 teams. And I understand that Vancouver might not make the mark in some of these. I understand that Lansing and Vancouver are kind of competing for one of the Blue Jays affiliation spots. Can you fill the viewers and listeners in with where that kind of stands these days?
Yeah, you know, I can't speak much to the second one. I've heard what you've heard, but I haven't heard anything above that. That's well above my pay grade. But what I will say is that Major League Baseball came out, I want to say, 4 or 5 months ago, with a list of 42 franchises that were not going to be around in 2021. And people will say, well, why is that? So Major League Baseball is trying to reduce the number of affiliates that they have per organization. And if memory serves me correct, they're trying to get it to a place where every team in Major League Baseball has 4 affiliates. Now, to preface the second part of your question, Darren, the Blue Jays had 6 affiliates, and they needed to skim it down to 4. Bluefield, which is of the Appalachian League, they're gone. That whole league is disintegrated, which is gut-wrenching for me. That's a league that's been there nearly a century, and now all of a sudden they're all gone, which is really bizarre to me. So the Lansing versus Vancouver question, I know what you're saying, because they're going to keep Buffalo, they're going to keep New Hampshire, they're going to keep Dunedin. So the Blue Jays, those 3 are locks, the AAA, the AA, the long A. So Lansing, of course, of the Midwest League, geographically makes a lot of sense, but Vancouver from a marketing and branding perspective also makes a lot of sense. So the Blue Jays have not talked to us about it. They haven't communicated, which I think they got bigger fish to fry right now. We'll circle back on this when the time is right. It's going to be a tough choice for them because I can make cases for both Lansing and Vancouver. But the reality is I think if you're a marketing person within the Blue Jays organization, why wouldn't you want that synergy with Vancouver and everything that we bring being Canada's only affiliated minor league team? But we also understand that we're a 5-hour flight as opposed to a 3-hour drive. So there's definitely conversations and challenges to be had, but we're just going to sit here and wait. And again, silence is sometimes the best thing you could bring to the table.
Good point. Good point. Yeah, well, it has been an amazing affiliation. 10 years. You guys have, I think you won 4 championships in those 10 years, 3 in a row. And it's, just been so fantastic to actually see some guys that come here. And then a few years later, they're, at the major league level. There is quite an amazing list of guys that have called Vancouver home for the summer. And then years later have made it up to the show. And you have been able to forge such a great relationship with so many of the former Jays and the guys that are coming up. The friendship that I've seen you forge with Roberto Alomar and so many of these young guys that have come up. Tell me about just being affiliated with the Jays and being Canada's only affiliated minor league team as well. It has been phenomenal for the country in baseball terms.
Yeah, I mean, as a kid that grew up in Toronto, thinking that 25, 30 years later that I'd be hanging out, having dinner with Roberto Alomar and Jesse Barfield is like bizarre. It still doesn't register, even as I say it in this conversation. But that's the beauty is the Blue Jays have been extraordinarily proactive in sending out players and good players to our team and previous players who are from the World Series championship years. I mean, if there's one thing that the Blue Jays can hang their hat on in Seattle is they didn't sell us short. 4 championships in a decade, more than any other franchise in the Northwest League. An embarrassment of riches when it comes to players that have come through here and help support our foundation and our players when they're in town. I mean, I don't think I would ever be able to wrap my head around another affiliation just because the Blue Jays have been so perfect for everything that we've done here in Vancouver.
Yeah. It's just been an amazing relationship, and it's revitalized baseball here. Just being able for so many fans to just think, hey, I'm cheering for this young guy that's just made it into professional baseball, has been a recent draft pick, and a few years from now, he's going to be on the Blue Jays, who is usually somebody's favorite team. So you guys have won the John Johnson Award as the best franchise minor league baseball. Wow, just like what an accomplishment that must have been. You guys must have been celebrating for days, weeks, months, years. Just some of the amazing awards and achievements you guys have had. You're getting the Groundskeepers Award year after year, and so many amazing things there, so many accomplishments, just fantastic.
Thank you. I mean, I think the John H. Johnson one that we got back in 2014 is my favorite, just because it's for the most, what is the proper terminology? The most complete franchise in minor league baseball. First time anybody outside of the United States had won that award. So that was a pretty big feather in our cap. No
kidding. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So the Superstar Series has been fantastic every year. Really great to be able to, go to the ballpark and see some of the former major leaguers. I can't even believe the quality of talent that has come through. And you've got so many opportunities to see all these great former major leaguers. Yeah, talk about that Superstar Series and being able to put that together and year after year, getting a lot of guys from around Major League Baseball.
Well, Darren, I'll finish up with this, and that's why I was scouring from one of my cards. I'm going to try to see if you can see this. So there's a squibbly line on this. So imagine that being Bill Buckner's signature. So you bring your baseball to the stadium. We've had Bill Buckner, former Boston Red Sox, of course, notorious for the error he made in 1986 and helped the Mets to the World Series. So Bill Buckner comes to town, signs a bunch of autographs. Well, guess who we had 2 years later? Who's the guy that hit the ball through his legs? I wanted to say Mookie Wilson, but I know I'm wrong. Anyways, no, was it Mookie?
Mookie Wilson. I think it was Mookie Wilson. You're right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not losing my mind completely. So anyways, a baseball fan who had come here to Nat Bailey Stadium a couple of years earlier brought the same baseball because he wanted a baseball that was signed by both Bill Buckner and Mookie Wilson. So remember this. This is the Bill Buckner signature. All right? Remember this. This is how Mookie Wilson signed his autograph. Let me see if I can get it. He signed his autograph going through Bill Buckner's, and I'll never forget it.
Wow.
It's the greatest thing I've ever seen. So
that's hilarious.
Darren, thank you so much for this interview. It has been outstanding. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really glad you could come on, and this has been fantastic. We got to do it again. I'm going to be sending a lot of listeners your way for Wednesday, and can't wait for it. Let's do this again, Rob. It was really a pleasure.
You know where to find me. You got my number. You can call me anytime. I'm sorry I have a meeting I got to run to. It's the nature of the beast. But Darren, you're good people, man. Thank you.
You too. Thank you. Thanks. Take care, Rob. All the best.
See you, Darren.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay,
bye for
bye-bye.
now. That's great. Yeah. Wow. Rob Fai Nation. Rob Fai joining the Complete Sports Media podcast. Wow, it was fantastic. Yeah, I had a million more things to talk to him about, but busy guy with obviously this season and the COVID pandemic changing everything. Hopefully gets a lot of great news and lots of great things out of this meeting that he's going to. And please tune into the Rob Fai Nation podcast. I'll find links and I'll send it out to all you subscribers and everybody that's listening in. And we're going to have Rob on again. Had so much to talk to him about. We didn't get to the things that he's done with the World Baseball Classic, EA Sports, just so many fun memories and so many fun things that we can talk to Rob Fai about. So, but glad we had his time, even though it was short. And I hope you enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. Really great guy. And let's en masse go out to the ballpark in 2021, support the Seas and support Rob Fai Nation podcast. We're really excited that he's back on the airwaves here in Vancouver. So thanks so much. Take care of yourself. Love you lots. I will see you very, very soon. Keep tuning in. Bye for now.